Here's one simple trick you can do to actually make more money when you're cold calling and you're actually using a dialer system. And if you're not really sure what a dialer is, it's basically this thing or this website where instead of you having to pick up your phone every single time you make a cold call and individually type the number, you can actually import a list of people's names and their phone numbers into this dialer website, and you can click a button and it'll automatically start calling these people over and over again so that you don't have to individually type these numbers every single time. So that's what a dialer is. Now, if you're using one, everyone thinks that if they just use a dialer, they're going to be much better off. And they probably will be. But there's one key thing that not a lot of people do when they're starting out that I think makes a very big impact. And it's actually having a lot of phone numbers that you're calling from. Now, what I mean by that is that most people, when they start cold calling, they're literally just using their cell phone number and they're cold calling thousands of people, instantly being marked as spam likely from these providers, from like AT&T, Verizon, stuff like that, instantly. Now, some people use a Google Voice number and it's the same effect. The number gets marked as spam likely very fast because you're just dialing so fast over and over again, because the assumption is that most people don't actually answer the phone and you have to repeatedly call. So that's why it's helpful to have multiple numbers. And the question becomes, well, how many numbers should I have? And I do think it is a little bit dependent on the actual dialer that you use, because some of them source their numbers differently. Some of them vet their numbers differently or filter their numbers and screen them better. Now, for the most part, I think it's beneficial to have at least 30 phone numbers that you're calling from. And it's very simple to do this. Like, a lot of the times the dialers will actually have a number provider to use so that you can easily add numbers to them. So for me, the dialer that I like to use, and I've used a bunch, this is not like an endorsement of any sort, but I right now like to use Ready Mode Dialer. Essentially, it allows me to buy the phone numbers through the actual dialer itself. And I have about 30 phone numbers for one specific area, one specific area code that I can call from. And that way, I'm not being marked as spam likely all the time. Now, there's still a good chance that these numbers are going to be marked and that it'll hurt my actual cold calling results. However, for the most part, if I actually have this many numbers and each number is going to be randomly picked every single time I make a call, and I'm not just exhausting one number until failure, I should be okay. And that's the thing, is you could be doing all the right things. You could be doing the cold calling, doing enough volume of it. But if you don't have this one thing, if you don't have all these phone numbers that you're actually calling from, it makes it a lot harder to find contacts, because no one's going to answer your phone. And the less people answer your phone, the less money that you are going to make. So some dialers, like I said, will be able to rotate the numbers as you call. Some won't. With some of them, you actually have instances where you start cold calling, and let's say you did have 30 numbers, 30 phone numbers that you were calling from as your caller ID. If you had that, some of the dialers just call from one number first until that number reaches a certain threshold, reaches like maybe like 7,200 dials, and then it switches the number, or it tells you, hey, you should probably switch this number out. Now, what I found is like the dialers that do that, I don't really like them that much, because I prefer for them to auto rotate the numbers as I call. Because if that happens, like all the numbers just become bad. If it's one number calling super fast, 7,000 people at a time, like it becomes a little bit tricky. So I like the dialers that allow you to rotate the numbers more freely as you dial. Now, the thing about using a dialer, now that you know that, that's good to have multiple numbers. I think another thing too is you want to be able to ask your dialer representative, what are like the gold standard best practices for this dialer? Like ask them, hey, what metrics are gold standard? What KPIs or key performance indicators should I look at to make sure that I know that this dialer is working properly and I'm getting enough contacts, I'm getting enough people to actually answer the phone? Like, what are the metrics that I should look at? Because every dialer is actually a little bit different, and the dialers that you're going to be going after, they're going to know the data. Like they have the data to say, yeah, these are the things that work. These are the things that don't. So ask them, what are the gold standard metrics that I should be looking at? And what are the bad metrics? Like, so what are the metrics that I should be looking at for once things start to go down? Like that I should start changing things. I should start changing the numbers or maybe adding more numbers, removing my phone numbers. Like, what should I start doing when I see certain metrics? They'll know. So, like, ask your sales rep. So, whoever you got on the phone with that sold you to actually get this dialer, or if you're not there already, talk to them and ask them, hey, what are the gold standard metrics? What are the bad or poor metrics that I should look at to keep track of? Now, a couple common ones are like calls to connect on average. So essentially, one thing that they might look at is how many calls on average does it take to connect to one person or contact one person? And it's going to be a specific number for every single dialer. I'm not going to throw out a specific ratio for you. Another thing that they might look at is like abandonment rate. How many calls do you abandon? And when I say abandon, I mean like an abandoned call essentially is any time that you are on the phone and you miss a call for whatever reason. So let's just say you're using a triple line dialer, you're calling 3 people at every single time, and let's say 2 people answer because you're calling 3 people at once. So you're only able to talk to that one person. The other person that picked up, they're abandoned. And so same thing goes for like if you're calling and you're calling on the dialer, you're on the phone with someone and someone calls you back, inbound call, and you missed that call. That's an abandoned call. So like they'll look at the abandonment rate, basically how many abandoned calls are there divided by the total number of calls that you're making. And for me, I know for me that as soon as that rate starts to creep up to like 2.5%, I'm really trying to scale back and maybe say instead of using 4-line dialer, let's try triple line or double line or single line even, because I don't want to abandon so many calls. These are all potential prospects that could sell their house to me and I can make money from them. So that's like those are just a couple metrics that you can look at. But like I said, you will definitely get the best bang for your buck by just talking to your sales representative or your sales support for that specific dialer, and they should be able to help you out and identify the gold standard metrics or the poor metrics to actually be aware of. But just make sure that you understand if you're cold calling with a dialer, have a bunch of numbers. 30 to 50 is often industry standard to just be safe. And it doesn't cost that much. Like most of the time, for me, I think I'm paying $30 a month for the 30 phone numbers, and I paid an initial $30 to get the phone numbers. So it's like, it's not expensive, and it's probably you're going to be your best return on investment when it comes to your cold calling. So I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.